y'all hear me? Nifty. What's up, y'all? Huzzah! I got my Yeti mug here. Sponsored by Yeti Mug. What if I just talked about Yeti Mug the whole time? It's got my name on it. Can you see that? Dave. I actually really like this thing. What's wrong? What?
People are saying they can't hear you well.
Oh. Volume up? Computer, volume up?
Said audio on only left ear.
Oh. Let me take a look at that.
Somebody likes Lemuria.
Audio's only in the left ear. That's weird. Let me look into that really quick. Sorry, folks.
Yeah, it's the same for me.
I can turn the volume up, but it's going to be peaking. It's fine, yo. Is that any better, guys? Alrighty. Well. Bear with me. Earbud warning. If I just did that the whole time. Oh, God. Yeah, I'm using Streamlabs, so with OBS. I'm looking at the microphone settings. I'm just not seeing anything that would explain the problem. Yeah, I think if you guys can just hear me, we might just move on with it. Oh, got a super chat. Thank you. Oh, that's very nice, man. Thank you to I Productions. Alrighty. Well, hello and welcome to Nightmare Masterclass. My name is David Stockdale. I'll be your host on this excursion into the dark unknown. So, in this special live installment, I'll be watching, well, I don't know if we're going to watch the full new Petscop videos in their entirety because you guys have probably already seen them. I've already seen them, but we might be just highlighting a few tidbits from that video, from the 2 videos that were released. So if you're not already aware, one was uploaded yesterday afternoon and one was uploaded this morning. So yeah, interesting. When it rains, it storms, I guess. I'm going to crack open this sparkling raspberry lime spring water. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if we're going to get more videos in the immediate future, but it's possible, right? That's kind of how the channel has operated in the past. Like I think they've gone through streaks where they just upload a bunch of videos and then just go dark for months. So yeah. It seems to be the modus operandi of the whoever is operating that channel. And alrighty. Well, that's a good idea. If I put the audio on mono, I just don't know where to do that. I guess go to my audio settings. So I have rarely streamed. I apologize if I'm a total amateur at this. I messed around on Twitch a little bit, but that didn't really go anywhere. One second. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it anymore. I promise the next time I stream, I will have it figured out. Alrighty, so I have a Google Doc pulled up here. This is really not going to be like a fleshed out analysis, obviously, because I have had less than 24 hours to compile notes. So really what I'm expecting out of this is just to talk about it a little bit, see what people in the chat think, and I have a few notes jotted down that I have compiled over the past day on both of the videos, but it's really like, it's not much. It's like a page and a half. So don't expect any mind-blowing stuff here. I'm really just interested in talking about little, I don't know, Easter eggs, things that we can connect to the previous videos, stuff like that, thematic connections, clues as to what's going on, possibly. I personally think it's heading in a really interesting direction. But, you know, I really have no idea what's going on. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to, like, pretend like I know, like, I'm following things exactly. But I don't know. This project is really, really unique. I feel like I've never seen anything like it before. So I'll say that right off the bat. But what I also want to say is I do find Lynchian elements in it, as David Lynch, i.e. I find Lynchian elements in it occasionally. So I see some of that, especially in the classroom. There's something about that classroom that reminds me of, the red, what's it called? The Red Lodge, the Black Lodge, with the red curtains in the background. There's just something that I guess it's just like a surreal setting where you're interacting with this ominous figure and you don't really know what's going on, and you get these like ominous little clues here and there. Yeah, that is a good observation. The keys, right? Like, there's just something about this that is Lynchian. Honestly, if you haven't already seen the videos, I will personally recommend that you just stop watching my stream and go watch them, just by yourself, or without my commentary. You don't need my commentary in your ear when you're watching the Petscop videos for the first time. You should watch it on your own and like formulate your own thoughts about it, because I find that like people all over the damn internet have like such off the wall ideas that I never would even have thought about. And then I hear them and I'm like, that's totally plausible. So I love getting people's impressions of the videos just like right after they've watched them. Yeah, and I assume if you're watching this, you've probably seen them. So that's just a little disclaimer that I really recommend you watch them. Whoops. Alrighty. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, you might see it, I have it written down here, is Schrodinger's cat. And the reason I wrote down Schrodinger's cat relates to that riddle. That riddle that was told in the 14th video about the two different doors. And I could give less of a shit about seeing Bill Burr on Savage Mode. I don't know why YouTube recommends all this garbage to me. I like Bill Burr, by the way, but like this like Savage Mode destroys, this guy destroys this other guy. I don't give a fucking shit. Like, you're just fetishizing like domination in. My girlfriend's telling me to calm down. I have anger issues, if you haven't noticed. Yeah, I typed youtube.com. What do you think I'm going to... I don't have it saved to my bookmarks. What do you want from me? All right, so in this 14th video, there's an illusion. Let's see, where is it? Well, first off, it starts off with a completely green screen. And someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's happened in any previous video. I could be wrong about that.
And if I were to pass through this doorway...
So he's talking about the doorway.
What would happen?
Yeah. Is this the... Yeah, so this is the riddle right here. Similar puzzle. Similar to the windmill. Two pictures of a door. In the first picture, the door is closed. In the second picture, taken later, the door is open. Two pictures. Nobody opened the door? The door didn't open by itself. Well, hot damn, how'd it get open? It didn't open at all. Okay, so what happened? So this is at face value, if we think about this riddle, there's no logical explanation, right? If no one opened the door and the door didn't open by itself and the door didn't open at all, what the fuck happened? That makes no sense. It's not logically consistent. It doesn't fit with like our standard model of physics, right? If you assume that the first door is the same door in the second picture, if you assume that it's the same door, but it's somehow open, the riddle makes no sense. But as is often the case with riddles, there might be some underlying assumptions that we have when we hear the premise that are in fact not the case. Okay? So, the reason I wrote down Schrodinger's cat is because that's sort of like a paradox or like a thought experiment thought up by this guy named Schrodinger. And look, I'm not a quantum physicist, so you're not going to get like a educated account of this from me. But he was trying to explain, I believe he was trying to explain a certain theoretical model in that was hypothesized in quantum physics. And basically, what are you laughing at?
Somebody's comment.
Basically, there's this cat, right? And the cat could possibly be in two different states. The cat could be alive or the cat could be dead, right? Oh, thank you for the super chat. Taken at a different perspective as to look closed. So this person is thinking that the door was taken at another perspective to give the impression to the viewer that the door is closed. Excuse me.
Dave. That's gross.
I think that's plausible. And I think the point of the riddle is that there's an assumption that we have when we hear that riddle that is false. So if that's the explanation, that it was taken at a different perspective, sort of like a visual illusion, that makes sense. And I think it actually fits with some of the themes in Petscop. Anyway, back to Schrodinger's cat. So there's a cat. You can't see the cat. He's in another room. I don't know why I'm assuming the cat is male, but could be a female cat, whatever. And it could be alive or it could be dead, right? And you don't know what the actual situation is. You don't know whether the cat's alive or dead. Schrodinger says that prior to you opening the door and seeing the cat and knowing actually and seeing for yourself what's happened, Schrodinger says the cat is both alive and dead at the same time. Now, to our ears, that doesn't make sense, right? But he says that there are two realities. There's one reality where the cat is alive, and there's one reality where the cat is dead. So once you open the door, you actually see what is actually the scenario. What reality you're living in. So if you open the door and you see the cat's alive, you go, oh, I'm living in this universe where this cat is alive. And if you see the cat is dead, then you're in the universe where the cat is dead. But the point is, these two possibilities are realized. They're already realized in different universes. So I'm probably not explaining that as clear as it could be explained, because, as I said, I'm not a quantum physicist or a theoretical, particle guy. But that's basically my understanding of Schrodinger's cat. There are two different realities going on. And so that would be a pretty wonky way to understand what's going on in Petscop. But it's a thought that I had when I was first watching that video and I heard that riddle. I was like, okay, this door is in two different states. How do you explain that? And my mind immediately went to Schrodinger's cat. Someone in the chat says, the idea is that both states are both true and false at the same time until observed to be one or the other, collapsing the possibilities. That's basically what I said, right? I thought that was what I said. Anyway, that's one way to think about it. I don't know if it's the right way to think about it, but then I saw, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know the username, but I saw someone in the Petscop subreddit explain this another way that I think is also plausible. And the way they understood it was, or at least it's a possibility, that the two pictures we're seeing are of different doors. So that is actually, if we're doing Occam's razor, I think that's the most reasonable explanation because it's the one that requires the least amount of assumptions. So if you follow the logic of the riddle, the idea that it's a picture of two different doors is logically consistent. So if you have a picture of another door and it's open, that is not, there's nothing that is contradictory in the fact that you have another picture of a door that's closed. That it's logically consistent. So sometimes the simplest explanation is the best. Sometimes it's not. Who's to say, really? I don't know. Another thing I wanted to talk about was a certain game mechanic that might be related to the door situation. Or I guess it is related because you have Paul talking about a door that's closed. Or is it open? I can't remember. Right.
Because that idea involved pretending something was there that wasn't there.
Right.
And this idea involves pretending that this door right here, this one.
And then look
open.
at that.
rather than closed. You can see that it's closed.
He says, you can see that it's closed, but we, the viewers, see that it's clearly open. So what kind of shenanigans are going on there? I would speculate that what we're seeing is edited footage, and this is not a new idea. I think I talked about the possibility that the footage is being edited. I mean, it's certainly being edited, right? Even the first video was edited for brevity's sake, right? So we're not sitting there watching every little thing that happens in the game. But increasingly, we are noticing throughout the course of the videos that the editing is getting more erratic. And in this video, we're seeing that the footage is being edited over Paul's voiceover. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure somebody will. But I don't think that's ever happened before. I don't think there's been what is clearly a superimposed image with Paul talking about a door being closed, where we, the viewers, are seeing that that's clearly not the case. So that's a new thing. That's a new anomaly. But the other thing I wanted to talk about is this game dynamic that's being made apparent here.
I'm going to and I think so if I go to the right, God, I think I went a little too far actually. Nope. Well, I think actually what happens here, the problem is that it's a kind of a branching point. I could stop, I could be blocked by the beds, or I could keep going past the beds to the other side of the room. So I could actually be on...
So one thing I want to note here is that Paul is well aware of this dynamic. So one would think that he's been playing this game so long that he's had enough time to think about it and logically deduce that that's what's happening. That when he moves in a certain area of the game, another avatar in another part of the game is making the same exact movements, right? And there are several things in the previous videos that would appear to foreshadow this, right? The first instance I can think of is in the first video. So So in the very first video, Paul has to solve a number of little puzzles in order to make it through even care. And as we've seen in the past, the various rooms in even care correlate to other parts of the game. Now, this particular puzzle involves a keyboard.
Music.
Take a look for yourself. Okay.
What you hear is you have to get your clone.
So what's happening? Paul has an exact replica of his avatar moving in the exact same fashion that he is, And it's required of him to employ that mechanic to solve the puzzle. So in the later video, we have the exact same, in Petscop 14, we have the exact same dynamic, except that the avatar is in an entirely different part of the game that is not visible to the player.
Either side of the room right now. Possibly a text box will open, because that's what happens with the windmill, right? I pressed X and a text box appeared.
But the really strange thing about this is that Paul is describing things that he is not seeing, but we are. So it follows that someone else has access to the game and is seeing exactly what Paul is doing on the other side of it, if you will. And then the footage after Paul gives it to the proprietors, the footage is edited such that we see what the proprietors see. So that's just a thought. Yeah, I'm paying attention to the chat, but I have to talk about this stuff. I assume that's why you're watching. And the other thing is, obviously, there is another scenario in the game where there's another avatar making the same exact movements as Paul. And that's in Quitter's room, right? So this dynamic is alluded to a couple of times prior to this happening. So, okay. So, obviously, 14 is a pretty long video. It's 27 minutes long. I'm not going to talk about every little aspect of the video, but another thing I wanted to discuss is the idea that the series is going in a supernatural direction. So, up until video 14, we've seen some pretty foreboding stuff, but we haven't seen anything that would indicate that the actual occurrences are supernatural. We haven't really gotten any verification of that on our end. But in video 14, we do get some kind of evidence. It's anecdotal. So it's based on Paul's account of something. Now, we can always question the narrator's perspective, right? We can question whether or not what Paul is saying is really reality. That's always subject to question. It's entirely possible that we have an unreliable narrator on our hands. People have speculated about that since the beginning of the series. But I don't know about you, but I tend to believe him. Now, in video 14, he enters this house again, and he seems to happen upon a birthday party. And you have the same exact situation with the pictures of the CDs, except they are silhouettes. You can't see what's actually on them. And then you get something of a situation, if you will. So you have this text. Where's the disc? Where are the discovery pages? Presumably, this character is alluding to the CDs. So the other character, who is later referred to as Jill, has absolutely no idea what they're talking about. So that's troubling. It's clearly the case that when Paul explains that this very same conversation occurred with him about a year ago, it's obvious that Paul must be the person saying, Jill, stop fucking ignoring me, because who else would be saying it? So this character, Jill, I suspect is possibly his mother, because we have this whole scenario here where there's a birthday party and Jill is saying, I know your face has changed, but, and just sort of reassuring him that he has a home, right? So it's pretty clear that if Paul's account is correct, he was pretty angry when this originally occurred. Obviously, right? Right. And so Jill refers to Paul as the character known as Care. So that kind of changes our perspective of the whole series. If we go back and think of Care as someone who is analogous to Paul himself, then it kind of changes the dynamic of the game, because Paul is catching himself. Paul is hearing all these situations that occurred about himself. So that must be pretty chilling, right? it kind of explains why Paul is so invested in playing this game, because it's about him, or at least in part it's about him. Thank you, Elijah Sly, for the super chat. Elijah says, I thought it was pretty clear that Paul is watching and recording all these demo sessions, realizing that they mirror his movements and using that knowledge to solve certain puzzles and make progress. That totally makes sense. Yeah, I could see that. So Paul alludes to the demos, I believe, in this video. And what he says about them is that they seem to mirror his actions, but they didn't have to be exactly the same. So that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Yeah, and Paul is swearing at his mother, which is something you just don't do. That is, contemptible. Yeah, so there's all sorts of questions that are raised about this scene if we consider that Paul is in fact Care and this Jill character is his mother. Why is he so angry? What is he looking for? Why does his mother say that his face has changed? These are all valid questions that are open at this point. I don't have the answer. I know just about as much as you, which is nothing. And so the second thing is, if the game is alluding to this event, if we accept the premise that the game was created in 1997, then how is it alluding to an event that occurred in the future? There's the one possibility is that it's a fucking haunted game and it's supernatural, and Paul should chuck it in the trash, which I probably would have done by now. But there are other possible explanations, right? It's so it's not established in the series that things are headed in a supernatural direction, but it's definitely a possibility. Paul researches whether or not you can write over a CDR, which is CD recordable, and the answer is you can't. Which is why people on the internet made fun of him for asking that. Which is what tends to happen when you ask the internet any question. But then you get some nice people who tell you the answer at some point, hopefully. So the one possibility is that Petscop is on a CDRW, which is rewritable, which would allow for the possibility of someone taking the disc and writing over it with a new version, which includes Paul's situation, his argument with his mother. The other possibility is that someone's breaking into his home and switching out the discs, which I don't know. What's more plausible? That someone is breaking into Paul's house and switching out the disc with a new version that specifically alludes to his life, or the game is haunted. They're both pretty far-fetched. So it's entirely up in the air at this point, I think. Someone is going, the game can edit itself, which is horrifying, right? So that would be the supernatural direction, right? If the game can edit itself, that is horrifying. That's not a game you want. So let's talk about Petscop 15. I will say that I'm not quite as prepared for this one because it was uploaded while I was at work. So I've really only had a chance to watch it once. The most notable thing that comes to my mind about 15 is, well, obviously it's shorter, so but in the school hallway, there's a game mechanic that we've seen before where Paul's avatar switches back and forth between like a first person perspective and a third person perspective. And as far as I can gather, the switch doesn't seem to correlate with anything. It just seems kind of random. But one thought that I had is that it's related to a continual theme in the game, which is disassociation. So when someone experiences trauma of some kind, there is this psychological tendency to dissociate from the situation. And so I'm not a psychologist. I don't have professional expertise in that area. But in the abstract sense, I understand what's happening. When you dissociate, you are no longer, it's sort of like a defense mechanism, so you don't have to personally experience what's going on. You're looking at it as an outside observer, right? You're no longer identifying with your own subjective experience. You're identifying with something else. You're off in another place. So I thought that the continual switches between first person and third person perspectives could be alluding to this. Just a thought. I don't know. I Productions. Thank you again for the super chat. What about the tool being a Tarnacop or a pickaxe? I don't know what either of those things are. Sorry. I could Google that. I don't know. Now in the 15th video, we'll go to it now. He starts out in the school with that same brick frame around the screen which we have in no other part of the game. One thing I want to note about that is that it creates a sort of a visual sense that things are constricted, that almost like a prison, almost like there's no way out. The entire thing is encompassed in brick, and you're trapped. So that's one thing. That's one other thing I want to note. So we've got this situation where Paul runs into this creepy looking character here that we have seen previously, I believe in Segways, where you have to take a screen grab and kind of mess with the contrast a little bit, and then you see this guy. Not exactly something you want to see. And as Paul approaches this figure, the game plays like rapid pace, ominous music. And then there's letters floating in air. Oh, Tarnikop is Romanian for pickaxe. So I never, so when I look at the tool, the first thing that pops into my head is not a pickaxe, but that's as good a guess as any other at this point. Yeah. Yeah, right. And it says girl. So the letters are sort of twirling around in midair, and occasionally you can see the word girl. Yeah, creepy. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is so there are certain parts of this video where Paul turns around or something. I think it's coming up. So I'll try to pause it and show you what I'm talking about. Yeah, right. Okay, so let me go back and pause it. I don't know. His eyes are making some kind of I don't know if that's Paul's angry face, the avatar's angry face. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I just wanted to make note of that because I don't think we've ever seen that face before. So I'm just trying to like go through the videos and take notes of things that have things that are unique to these new videos, and try to look for patterns. And just to give you some indication, that's basically what I do when I'm making an analysis video. When I'm in the research and writing phase, I'm going through it and just trying to look for patterns that come up, and I'm trying to make connections. So that's how I think about it. Okay. Is there anything else? So that's really all I got to say about the videos. I thought at this point it would be a good time to do a Q&A. So if any of you have some ideas about what's going on in Petscop, you can sound off in the comments. I know a lot of you are already, and I'm not going to get to everybody, but I'll try to point out comments that I think are particularly interesting. And if you happen to have questions about anything else, if it's unrelated to Petscop, that's fine too. Yeah, so someone's asking, what's with the CD pictures? Do they represent something? That's really anyone's best guess. I think it's entirely possible that they represent the game itself. Because if you remember in the 14th video, when Paul's trying to figure out this whole situation where there's like another avatar that's making the same movements as him, and he's interacting with stuff he can't see, during that part of the video, we see the CDs themselves and the various angles at which they appear, and you can kind of interact with them and move them around a little bit, and it plays this like ominous music when you pick one of them. But later in video 14, we see the same situation where Paul has entered the house, and there's inexplicably there's a birthday party going on, and he goes into that very same room, and the very same CDs are obscured. They are there's just a silhouette. There's just a shadow where they should be, so the character who is referred to as Care says, where are the discs? So the dialogue even seems to be alluding to this situation, that the discs are obscured in some way and the character can't see them. So that's interesting. So Kenny says, following your Schrodinger's cat theory and there being two different realities, what if Paul and Care are the same person in separate realities? Using that logic, Mike was a gift and Belle is a present. So with the Schrodinger's cat thing, I just want to emphasize that's just a thought I had. I'm not actually sure if that's what's going on. But it might be a useful way to think about it. I don't know. Could be. So as with there being different versions of the same character in different realities, if you sort of follow the logic of Schrodinger's cat and that whole paradox, if you take him literally, it means there is a universe for which every single possibility has been realized. So that means there are versions of me where instead of the gene for dark hair, I got the genes for blonde hair, just because genetics are to some extent kind of random when you when your mother and father make a baby. Just following along that logic, there would be versions of me where I didn't graduate high school and I'm working at 7-Eleven, and there are versions of me where I'm a successful, successful, busy businessman, and I really don't want to live in that world because I would kill myself. But it's just an interesting thought experiment. I don't really buy into that theory, but it's interesting to think about. Anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. Someone says, do you think the new face is Paul B? Like Care A, Care B, and Care NLM. He looks like he's being pulled against his will. That is a really interesting thought, because throughout the series, we know that the various face patterns that correspond to different characters in the game, that has been continually emphasized throughout the game, right? So like when a face changes, or like something something strange happens, like someone gets their eyebrows removed, that is reflected in those face patterns, which yeah. So it would seem that like faces, the way someone appears, is like really important to the series. So like this new face that we're seeing in Petscop 15, it could be really important. Like the fact that we've seen a new version of Paul's avatar's face, it could be really important, or it could mean absolutely nothing. I don't know. I don't think we know enough at this point to really say either way. Okay. And what else? So someone is suggesting Paul's being made to censor the censored objects to solve a puzzle. What's up with that? The object isn't a windmill like it was before either. Yeah, so there's a part in 14 where Paul's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do in that room, and he's going in there completely blind, right? So he doesn't really know what's going on in that room because he's just controlling an avatar from another part of the game. And he blacks out whatever is censored there, right? So, yeah, it would appear that Paul is unwittingly censoring the game himself at this point. So yeah, that's a good observation. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks again, I Productions. Tarnikop is written on the side of the computer, and it's Romanian for pickaxe. It looks like a pickaxe from a top-down perspective. I'll have to look into that. That's interesting. And speaking, and while we're on the subject of like looking at things from a different perspective, let's just take note that in the 14th video, the game restarts and the logo, take a look. This is, I don't know about you, but this is really fucking creepy to me. I don't know why. So the G comes at you from a different angle, and also the entire logo is pointing down and to the right. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but it's creepy and it's weird. Someone says, I think Kara was imagining the discs, that she went crazy after some kind of abuse, possibly by Marvin's rebirthing sham. Jill acts as if Kara is crazy. That's why the footage is all overlaid. I can see why you think that. But you have to keep in mind that we could be getting a very loaded perspective of that particular event. So there's this thing called gaslighting, where something wrong is happening, and the other person just acts like you're being crazy, and they make you think that you are crazy, when it's really the case that your feelings are entirely valid, and like your experience is mapping onto reality just the way any other normal, healthy person is. And it's actually the case that the other person, you're in an abusive dynamic with that person, and they're making you think they're crazy. So we should keep in mind that, yeah, at face value, if we look at that exchange in the 14th video, it does seem as though like the character known as Care is acting erratic and being really angry. But it is entirely plausible that character, that Jill is engaging in like a gaslighting activity with that character. So without more evidence, we can't really say either way. So you have to consider the fact that the total inverse of what you're suggesting could be true. It could be that Care is justifiably angry for some reason, and we don't know why. Also keep in mind that if Care is analogous to Paul, and we've seen Paul's perspective this whole time, there's not a whole lot to indicate that he's not a rational person. There are a few strange things, and one thing I have previously pointed out is we should keep in mind that we have no idea how long Paul has been playing this game. It could be entirely way too long. So if he's alluding to events that happened a year ago, and we also know this footage has been edited, and these clips of Paul's gameplay have been released over the course of the past year or so, but we really have no indication when he was actually playing and for how long. Like there are some clues here and there, but that's something I think about is the story suggesting that Paul has been playing this game like 24/7 for the past year? Because if that's the case, there is cause for concern with respect to his sanity. Right, and so another weird thing, Paul says he has to call Jill, and we don't get that exchange. We don't get anything. So we don't know if Jill's a real person. We don't know like what their relationship is really like. We don't really know much of anything in that regard. Someone say, and it was obvious that Paul had already started playing Petscop, which was probably the catalyst for the overlap. Yeah, it's apparent from the first video that he is, that he has already been playing and trying to figure it out, for at least like a few hours. Thank you for the super chat. Elijah Sly says, I mean, earlier in the series, it did say the game had been on for like 17 years. Yeah, I don't know the exact timeline off the top of my head, but it suggested that the game was created in the 90s. So it's been around for a while. But the unknown variable is how long has Paul been playing? So this is an interesting theory that I just heard today. And I don't quite know what to make of it. I think it's extremely interesting, and I think it's plausible. Like, I don't know of any reason why it's not plausible. But I also say that there's not like a whole lot of evidence for it. And that's the idea that Paul is transgender. So I haven't read a whole lot about this theory, but I would assume that if the game is alluding to Paul as this girl called Care, that would mean he was assigned female at birth, and then at some point, he started to identify as a man and called himself Paul. That's, like I said, that's something I just heard today. I think it's interesting. I would need to look into it more, and I want to see some actual evidence in the game itself, other than the idea that Paul is analogous with Care. Another thing that supports this theory is the suggestion that the character's face has changed, right? So that is something that happens, right? When someone undergoes a transition, their face changes a little bit. So, yeah, I think it's plausible. Let's see. Thanks again for the super chat. I Productions. Multiplayer, time played total time of all players. Yeah, I don't know. Like, because we know that there's superimposed footage in the 14th video. So that would seem to imply that someone has access to the other perspective of what's happening. But as to whether it's a multiplayer game, I don't know. There is this other character who is referred to as Belle. Marvin refers to as Belle, but they insist their name is Tiara, a name that we've seen previously in the game. So there are clearly other characters. As to whether there are other actual players, what was that possible with a PlayStation 1? Could you play? I don't think you could play over the internet, right? Thank you, Windsor, for the super chat. Windsor says, strange situation is on the same day, but Care is in 1995, while Paul is in 2017. Care hits the door while Paul walks through. Can she see Paul go in? I'm not exactly following you, but if there's some kind of like time paradox going on here, if the series is headed in that direction, I mean, like I said, I mentioned the possibility that it could be going in a supernatural direction. If there's some kind of like temporal connection between 1995 and 2017 where you can like interact with things, that would be interesting. I'm not sure how it would be like established in a concrete way in the series, right? But we do have this consistent, we do have this like continual appearance of calendars and clocks. There is definitely an implication that time is extremely important in the game. So, yeah, that's interesting. All right, everybody. I think I'm going to end this live stream. I've been up since 6 in the morning, so I'm running out of steam. But thank you for watching. Thank you to all the people who gave me super chats. I will say that your support is extremely helpful to me, and it is continual motivation to keep doing what I do. So thank you. Thank you to everyone who watched the live stream. I might be doing a live stream again in the future. I don't know. Hit me up if that's something you'd be interested in. I would need to gauge the interest. It seems like this one went pretty well, so not too many technical problems. I promise I will have that audio situation figured out next time. And you guys take care. Let's keep our ears to the ground, and notification squad, hit me up whenever the next Petscop video is uploaded. My body is ready. All right, take it easy, guys.